What's up, people? Just a quick overview of our new language topic here in stage 9. And I'll admit this one is a little bit tricky. This is the dative case. It's going to give us a new set of endings, but you're going to see that the way I teach it and the virtual assignments and the assignments that go with the stories, I try to give you a lot of practice with it contextually. So try to pick out the situations in which you might be more likely to see a dative case than others. So I'll get to that as we get through the slides here. So right from the top, I'm going to say, don't freak out if this is a little confusing. I try to get it so that the guided practice throughout the stage will help you with it. So let's go through it. This stage, we've seen sentences like this. So you might see a sentence like, Quintus athletai discum novum tradidit. And this sentence says, Quintus handed his new discus to the athlete. So in this sentence, athletai is in the dative case. And notice which ending expresses it is the ending AE. That's part of what makes this a little bit tricky. So the dative case often expresses an indirect object. So you have to maybe apply a little bit of English to understand that. Or going back to Latin, it is the receiver of the action. So we know that the receiver of an action is accusative. It's a direct object. It's endings like am, or asoses. But the dative case says who's receiving the direct object. And so notice this sentence. All right, the subject of this sentence is Quintus. All right, in Latin, it's nominative. The receiver of the action, which is obviously handing over or trotted it, is the discus. All right, the thing that he handed was the discus, but the person who received the discus was the athlete. And that's where the dative indirect object comes into play. All right, it's all about the action. Quintus is doing the handing, the discus is being handed, and kind of indirectly, the athlete is receiving the handing through the discus. Sorry if I just kind of blew your mind there, but that's what this is all about. Think of it as the receiver of the receiver. If the direct object is the receiver, the discus, then the athlete is indirectly receiving the handing via the discus. And so in most cases, the dative can be translated to or for. So in English, this is a little digression because an indirect object wouldn't have a preposition with it, and an expression like to the athlete would be a prepositional phrase. But in Latin, there are actually more uses of the dative than just indirect objects, and pretty much as a blanket thing, the translation to or for works the best for all of those different uses. So like I said, this might be a little bit tricky. If I were just to throw endings at you and say, this is the dative, it might be a little confusing. And so what I do is I try to give you little indicators, and by no means is this list exhaustive. But there are certain common verbs where when you see them, all right, look out for a dative noun, all right? This is the verb dot, then ostendit, trotted, and nuntiat. Again, there are many more than those. There's narat, that comes to mind immediately. Demonstrat, we'll see eventually. But notice why these verbs are the ones with which you should expect a dative. Dot means gives. You often talk about giving something to someone. Ostendit means shows. You often talk about showing something to someone. Trotted is the verb to hand or to hand over. You often talk about handing something to someone. And finally, nuntiat is to announce. You announce something to someone. That to someone in all of those instances in Latin would be expressed with the dative case. So the point is, if you have the verb to carry or to hear, to hear something for someone, to carry something for someone, you could, come up with the situation in which that would arise. But really, you're looking for verbs like give and show and hand and announce. Like I said, you even have another verb to show, like demonstrat. You have narat is to tell something to someone. So I'm just giving you a short list of new vocab words that apply to the dative case. And when you see those verbs, you should probably say, hey, there's a direct object in the accusative, but there might also be an indirect object in the dative, which you can see, segue, with the following endings. Maybe not. All right. And so you see a lot of familiar endings here. All right. We're used to endings like AM and UM and EM. And last stage we saw AS, OS, and ES for the accusative case. But notice which endings now will express a dative, a singular, or plural. In the singular, you have AE, O, and I for each of the declensions in the singular. Then you have IS or IBUS, which is pretty much exclusively plural IBUSs in the plural. And so here's where the dative gets a little tricky because there's two AEs on the screen here. There's a dative singular AE and there's a nominative plural AE. So what this means is in Latin, one word, for example, femini, can mean both nominative plural, the women, as the subject in the sentence, like we learned in stage 5. But now we're seeing in stage 9 that exact same ending, AE, can mean 2 or 4, one woman. All right, that can be a little confusing. Same thing here with the dative and singular is I. For example, you have a form like mercatori. Mercator is a merchant. Mercatori is dative and singular. So it means 2 or 4, one merchant. But up here, a word like servi would be the slaves as the subject, nominative and plural. So it is tricky, and this is where you're starting to see like real Latin. And really what makes Latin tricky is that you use the endings, but they're not all unique. They're not all exclusive. And so this is why I teach something like the dative contextually, because if you have an AE and you don't have one of those verbs like give or show or tell or hand or announce, then it's probably going to be nominative plural. But if you do have the ending like AE or I with give or tell or show or announce or hand, then you should probably say, well, that could probably be 2 or 4 also. Again, I know it's a little confusing, but I just want you to understand that you're going to start to see some old endings used for different things. And I'm going to kind of use context to get you to see how these function and when you should translate them as 2 or 4 and when you should translate them as something else. Last thing, we get a couple of pronouns here. You're going to see some familiar stuff. But first, mihi means 2 or 4 me. I will burn this into your brain because I'm going to say mihi, 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 mihi means 2 or 4 me. And tibi means 2 or 4 you. Tibi, 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 tibi means 2 or 4 you. If you're having a bad day, say mihi, 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 mihi 4 times fast, and it'll improve your day quite a bit. Essentially, these are the dative forms of the words for I and you. So the whole chart for the first singular pronoun, we know very well that ego means I. We've been seeing that for a long time. We're all good with that. And me means me. All right. Whenever you see me, it's me. But keep in mind that it's accusative. That means it's me, the direct object. Then you throw in there that mihi means 2 or 4 me, and you have the dative form as well. Then you move over here to the second singular. Again, I think we all know very well that 2 means you, but that's the nominative form. Te, te, is you in the accusative, the direct object of the sentence. So 2 is you doing the action. Te is you receiving the action. And finally, just throwing it in there, tibi is 2 or 4 you, the dative form of this. So as I've said quite a few times here throughout this video, some people get confused by the dative case. Don't freak out. Don't sweat it. All right. This year, I'm really trying to use this contextually. If you're stuck on the dative case, really focus on questions and exercise that I ask with our stories. Like, which of the following forms in line, whatever, means 2 or 4 quintus, 2 or 4 the merchants, etc. All right, really trying to be really active with these endings and be able to identify and translate them a little bit better.